what one could do to protect themselves, or how does Israel or Jewish organizations protect itself throughout the world? And I think that's dealing with the issue core and head on, and it needs to be done as we pointed out in this show. But I think also on the positive side, and I think the Israel and certainly the Jewish way of life has always been look for ways to build and look for ways to grow and to create more value, to protect people in ways from the positive perspective. So I agree on one half of that concept, that we have a place, we have an option, which we haven't had for thousands of years. We've been waiting for this kind of option. It's on the table. It's available. So we. Upside Israel focuses on this concept of come to Israel and build companies. It hasn't been ever possible for Jews to be able to come home and to build. And we think that for every entrepreneur that comes to Israel, especially in these days, they'll build 100 jobs and hundreds of jobs and create a space for more people to come home. But I certainly believe that part of Israel's mission and part of the mission of all people should be find ways to protect people all around the world. I don't think it's going to end. This wave of hatred, I don't think it's going to end by bringing Jews home. I don't think the issue is Israel, and because of Israel, I think that's.
And does that send the right message necessarily to pull Jews out of areas that are under threat?
Correct. I agree with you. So I think our message is that we have a call out to entrepreneurs to build companies here, and we're focused on that from perspective of economics and build new companies.
That's where your organization comes.
That's where we focus. We're not about the fierce side, although there is a story playing itself out. And we believe wholeheartedly that. I grew up in the 60s in New York City, where at that time there were a lot of security issues for Jews, and the New York City was ruled by gangs for a period of time, and it was almost impossible to walk anywhere. So we were looking for that kind of safety measures, and at that time there were people taken to the streets. And I don't know. I hope it doesn't get to that, but ultimately we're looking for means of security and means of bettering our lives.
And Torben, what are your reactions to the Prime Minister's call for people to move to Israel from Denmark? Obviously, you're an immigrant yourself, so I want to hear your take on that.
I think it's he's right. It's the only place for Jews are in Israel, but as I think is that the Danish Jews, they have a good life there, so they it's very comfortable there. I don't know if somebody if the Aliyah. I think the Aliyah is becoming bigger now from Denmark, but it's not big. There's big what's called intermarriage there, and people are but maybe now they wake up and say, well, is this the future here? For instance, where I had some shops when I was living in Denmark, in the area where in Copenhagen, where there was a lot of Muslims, and every day somebody asked me, where are you from? Because I don't do Danish. I had to do like this. I'm Danish. Can't you see that? And it was not funny, And when I was standing outside the synagogue, and I had to say to people, take your kippah off, because it's dangerous to walk on the street.
Really? You felt it was dangerous to walk on the street in Denmark?
Yeah. They had a march in a demonstration some months ago in Copenhagen, where they walked to the politicians and Jews and non-Jews walked down in this area and with the kippah. They called it the kippah march, and to demonstrate that you should be allowed to go with a kippah on and to show you're Jewish, and you cannot do that. But it's in Sweden, in Malmö, that's a twin city of Denmark, of Copenhagen. They have 25% Muslims there, and the ex-mayor there, he was a social democrat. He was against Israel, and he was all his voters were from the Muslims, and it's really impossible to live as a Jew in Malmö. He didn't want to protect the what's called the synagogues and the Jewish places, so it's much harder there.
So there has been a feeling of a threat for a long time. People have not been feeling safe. Possibly not on the scale of Paris, for instance, but where there are so many attacks, but just a general sense of insecurity. But I want to talk to Jonathan again. I hope you're still on the line with us. I want to know how British Jews are reacting, how the community there is reacting to all of this.
British Jews are a fairly tough people, and I think just as your guests in the studio are saying, they know that life here is good for them, they feel safe, they feel protected. But with all of these situations, it only takes, sadly, one attack in order to challenge that. And the more those attacks are taking place across Europe, near enough that people can see them and appreciate that it's not so different a setting as it would be here in the United Kingdom, then people start to get worried. So there's no, as I said, indication that there's an attack imminent. But the UK at large, in general, regardless of the Jewish community, is still on its second highest level of alert regarding terror attacks. The only higher level it can be at is when there is known intelligence about an imminent attack that's going to take place. Given that that's the case, it seems strange when people react so much to the words of the Prime Minister of Israel saying to Jews in the diaspora that while they should be protected in their host countries, in the countries of which they're citizens and often have been for generations, that they have an option to move to Israel where their security is paramount, where the security of Jewish people is, let's say, the raison d'etre of the state in many ways. Given that that is his job as the Prime Minister of Israel, it seems odd that it's so inflammatory when he says that. But of course it's not odd, because an admission that Jews might be considering such a thing is an admission that those countries are failing their Jewish communities. And a further admission that those countries are failing their Jewish communities is when those Jewish communities are constantly having to mourn people murdered because of their faith. Europe is failing its Jews in certain respects. We can see that from repeat attacks where Jewish people are murdered by gunmen in cold blood. This is something that Europe has to deal with urgently. It can't bury its head in the sand any longer about the fact that Jewish people are targets, and that those targets are now getting increasingly worried about their own protection within Europe. It's time that Europe, of course, has to do something. That's what the Jewish community is saying. It's saying that it needs protection from the state.
And thinking about the mindset of these attackers, Dr. LePatin, is it possible that once these attacks take place, people want to copycat and people are more inspired and feeling like this is okay to target Jews? Is it more of a risk the more and more this happens against Jews?
Well, as I said before, I'm sure it's, we're going to have more and more attacks on Jews. But again, I don't think it's I don't think it's even right to call it anti-Semitism, because the original anti-Semitism came from the Christian right, from the traditional right in Europe, and that's no longer the case.
So you're saying
it's actually Semite against Semite.
So then what is this?
It's a terrorist attack. It's a terror attack. It's an attack on our way of life. It's an attack on everything that we believe on our democratic values, in our Western values. So I'm sure that Jews are up there in the list, of the people to be killed. But at the same time, it's not just an attack on Jews. And for me, when the President of France calling it anti-Semitism, he downplayed the phenomenon. It means that next time there's going to be a terrorist attack in Israel, he's going to call it anti-Semitism. No, it's a terrorist attack. It's an attack on all of us. It's an attack on our Western values, on the fact that, that there are Jews, that there are Christians, moderate Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, everyone who does not subscribe to their philosophy and their way of life, anyone who's not willing to accept the Sharia law. So it's not just against Jews. So we are up there in the list, but it doesn't mean that it's just against us. It's against all of us.
And it really seemed like the people of Denmark came together over the weekend after these attacks, because what I've heard is that Jews in Denmark, many of them, first and foremost, consider themselves Danes before even Jews, identity-wise. So it really seems like the country came together and is just completely shocked by this, and it's not just an attack against Jews, but as we saw in the cafe as well, it was an attack on the entire country.
I agree with that. Certainly in my home, I grew up in New York. My dad lives in Jerusalem today, and he still considers himself the ultimate Dane.
Yeah, and they're very proud people.
Very, very proud of being a Dane, and as we hear today, we're all Danes today, and I think that's been in the news as well. So.
Okay, well, on that note, we are finishing, but thank you all very much for being here this morning for this lovely panel. And coming up next, Quartet envoy Tony Blair visited Gaza for the first time since 2009 to view